Hello again, this is Daniel with another Book of the Week review. This week we're going to be reviewing the title, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, How to Be Insanely Great in Front of Any Audience by Carmine Gallo, who is a business and communications coach. This was written just last year, so it's quite current. Some good information in here about how Steve Jobs does what he does in terms of presenting and creating enthusiasm in front of an audience. If you're a bit of an Apple fan or a Steve Jobs fan, or if you're a budding presenter who wants to improve their presentation skills, this is a great book to really help you to refine and to improve your presentations. Overall, the book is very interesting. It offers some fantastic ideas in terms of how to refine, and there's three really key points in the book that I think are worth sharing. Number one is he talks about the idea that Steve always creates a story. Whenever he talks to an audience, he very much tries to enroll them in the vision and the story of how a product was created. So he's always trying to share that with them first before he launches into the details of what it is he's offering them. Sometimes what he also does is to create almost like an antagonist or a common enemy that he can actually kind of push against with his product. It's very interesting how he does that a lot of the time. So that's the first thing, creating a story. The second thing that he does very, very well is to create dynamic presentations, and that's a big part of the book in terms of how to improve your presentations through the wording you use, the layout, the format, also giving demonstrations. You often see that in Steve's keynotes where he'll offer ideas and then he'll actually get up and show you how the product works by physically holding it up and pressing all the buttons and doing some fun things with it on the stage. That really helps to engage your audience, that type of thing, and Carmine has some great ideas on how to do that in your own presentations. The third thing that he talks about is the idea of refining and rehearsing a lot. And very often when you look at a Steve Jobs presentation, it kind of feels a little bit unrehearsed. It feels very casual and laid back. And I think that Carmine helps to kind of debunk that myth that Steve does no preparation. He actually spends a lot of time, sometimes many weeks, preparing these presentations, trying to really refine and to get it down to its essence of what he wants to say. So I think those 3 points, create the story, create dynamic presentations, and then refine and rehearse. Those 3 things are really the key points of this book. Overall, some important points to note are that it's not written by Steve Jobs and there's no interviews with Steve in the book. So if you are looking for something that's kind of from the horse's mouth, you're probably not going to find that here. It's very much a third-party perspective on Steve Jobs, using a lot of descriptions from his keynotes from the past. The second thing to note is that if you are an Apple fan, you're probably going to love this book. It's full of details and minutiae about Apple products, the iPhone and MacBooks and different things like that. If you're not an Apple fan, or if you're against the Apple kind of brand and trend, you'll find that you probably hate this book. It will feel a lot like an advertisement for the products because there's a lot of detail in here about how they're launched and the details of each product. So that's an important caveat to remember. The third thing is it does feel a little bit like a cash-in sometimes, this book, in terms of it's conveniently come out just now when there's a huge sort of fanfare for Apple and they're riding high, and it feels a little bit like it's riding on the coattails of that just in some parts. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does feel like that a little bit. So be aware of that when you're reading it, that there's going to be that kind of tone in there as well, that it's kind of very pro-Apple and kind of riding on the success that's already there rather than kind of building from the ground up. Finally, I think overall this book is a great tool to use to improve and refine your presentation skills. What I actually did was to go to iTunes to the podcast and download the actual presentations that he talks about in this book. Unfortunately, there's no detail about his presentation of the iPad or the iPhone 4. They're much more recent than when this book was published. It would be great to see an update to see what he has to say about the way Steve presented those products because they were quite new and a new development. So they're missing from the book. So already it feels a tiny bit outdated in that way. So overall, Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, I'm going to give it 3 stars because there's some fantastic ideas in here. There's 3 really strong points in how to improve your presentation skills. As I said, it feels a tiny bit like a cash-in some ways. Very, very pro-Apple, so it's coming from one perspective. But overall, an interesting book, well worth checking out. 3 stars, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, How to Be Insanely Great in Front of Any Audience by Carmine Gallo. Check it out.